Grab your britches. Oh! Yay! Yes! That's so funny. Oh,
Okay, good morning, Timothy. Oh, apologies for this. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly update on Japanese politics, where we deliver the latest information on what is happening in Japan's political scene in both interactive and concise manners. Thank you for joining us, Timothy. Timothy is here to give us a rundown of the week's political events, including government affairs, public policy, the economy, and diplomacy, and also some other news that are out there or are going to be out there during the next week. And then in our sessions, Timothy breaks down tough issues and navigates Japan's political and bureaucratic landscape. And he is able to do that because of his wide network. He gets this information throughout the previous week and also works daily with foreign companies, chambers of commerce, and diplomatic missions, Diet members, and people in Kasumigaseki as well. So, Timothy, thank you for your willingness to share the insights with us. We know that you don't do this for a living, but, well, I appreciate the fact that you have decided to be here every Sunday morning. Now I'm giving you the floor to let us know what you're going to talk about today and
okay.
what we can talk about during the Q&A session. Here we go.
Thank you very much, Maya. Good morning, everybody. Wow, we got something going on, don't we? Frogs and throats. Thank you for joining us. It is June 23rd, 2024. This is our episode, Maya, 176 together. That's pretty amazing. Thank you very much for sticking with me and sticking it to me so that I have to show up every Sunday.
Right. It's not easy. It's been really tough to get you here every morning.
But I appreciate it. I appreciate the audience. I know that there is just a dearth of information about what's going on in Japanese politics. I'm honored that you have joined us for 3.5 years every Sunday to find out what's going on in Japanese politics. It is, like Maya said, something that I do for a living. I don't do briefings for a living, but if you are interested in having a briefing, please let us know, and we might be able to arrange something for you or bigwigs that are coming through town that are interested in what's going on that's important to them. In any event, a lot is going on. You know, the 150-day diet session actually ends today. 150 days, it's set in the Constitution, and the Prime Minister started it in January, the last possible day in January he could start it, because you remember there was the investigation by the public prosecutors about the kickback scandal, and they were moving very aggressively on members of the Diet. The Prime Minister gave them a little bit more time to conclude their investigation. And then once the Diet starts, the investigation has to stop. They can't question members of the Parliament anymore. And so the Diet started there, 150 days. And 150 days ends today. And that's why the Diet session formally ends today, but the Prime Minister ended it on Friday, as you probably know. There's a lot going on. 70 years ago tomorrow is the end of the Battle of Okinawa. Probably not many people register that, but it is a significant day in history. It's a significant day for me as well, and I think it's something that people should reflect on. The largest battle in the Pacific War, 90 days, the largest number of casualties on both sides, which was a battle that helped end the Pacific War. Less than 2 months later, Nagasaki and Hiroshima happened as a consequence. And then we are living in this world today where, amazingly, people like you and me can live and benefit and do business in a country like Japan that has marvelously risen from the ashes of defeat and created just the most amazing country and culture. So I'm very honored to be here. Let's see, there's the political reform bill, as you know, passed on Wednesday, almost the last day it could pass. And the party leaders debated on Wednesday. It was the first time for this prime minister to be in a room to debate against the party leaders of the Constitutional Democratic Party, the Communist Party, the Ishin. There's a lot going on there. I'd like to get more into it, but I don't want to get stuck into the details right now. Maya, let me turn it over to you before I get back into the details. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we touch upon a lot of these issues, and this is why it's called Tokyo Japanese Politics One-on-One, is because you can participate in the discussion. So I touch on the issues. If you're interested in them, please write to Maya, tell Maya, come on stage, and let's discuss those issues. And I don't know everything, but the issues that are important to us, to geopolitically, to foreign countries that are doing business in Japan, Japan's allies and partners, I can touch upon and I can speak with some degree of authority on, but I don't know everything. So there are people in the audience that know far more and are far more eloquent than I am talking about the issues. So please, it's an opportunity for you to join. Maya, thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. And just a word for our sponsors. The first one of them, somebody who we have known for a while here in Japan and we trust, Kanchu.com. Kanchu.com offers bilingual services to individuals who want to buy and sell property in Tokyo and Yokohama. And the company also does property management and investment property. So if you're interested in doing this and you need services in English, or if you need services in Japanese, please reach out to James Howell at james@kanachu.com. So you can connect with him at LinkedIn as well. The details are in the description of the video, or you can also just reach out to him and talk with him. Bilingual services for buying and selling property here in Japan. And that's it for the moment. Timothy, once again, back to you, because we have a lot to talk about today. There was a lot in the news as well this morning, so let's dive into it.
Thank you very much, Maya. The Paris Olympics start in 1 month and 2 days. That's going to be a big deal. It starts July 26th. It ends on August 6th. I'm sure it will take up a lot of television time here in Japan as well. It's a big deal, as everybody knows. The Paralympics start immediately after it, and they run from August 28th until September 5th. So it's going to be a hot summer with regard to international Olympics and sport. So let's keep a watch on that. The US Treasury has identified Japanese currency to be on the watch list. We've been watching the Japanese currency. The fluctuations, as you know, have been ongoing. The Treasury report put Japan on the watch list. You would think, yes, it's been on the watch list for us. We've been watching it very carefully. They came out with a report that said it's just on the watch list. We're just watching it carefully. But in our report, we confirm that none of our trading partners, none of the major economies which are allied with the United States, have been involved in currency manipulation. And that's a pretty big pill to swallow, because we know that the Japanese put in 6 trillion yen to support the yen less than about a month ago. And some people would call that manipulation, but the U.S. Treasury doesn't. And anyway, the yen is going to continue, I think, based on reading the tea leaves, that the Bank of Japan and the Finance Ministry has decided to try and let the yen find its own level, and that is not particularly good news for people who want the yen to go lower, the value of the yen to go higher, in other words. So it looks like it's going to continue to be breaching the $160 to the yen mark, and all we can do is stand around and watch that. There doesn't look like there's going to be any significant movement from the Bank of Japan beyond that, but it's something that is somewhat curious for us. The Japanese economy continues to suffer, and with the onslaught of the summer months, with air conditioning and transportation costs predicted to rise, it's anybody's bet what's going to be happening with the economy. Let's see what else I've got to report to you, if I can find my glasses. Let me see. The political reform bill passed on Wednesday. You will remember that it passed the lower house last week on Friday because the prime minister was able to get an agreement with Ishin no Kai to pass the bill. Ishin, the Komeito, their coalition partner, had negotiated with the LDP to tighten up transparency and to lower the the amount of fees that are paid before the donors' names are released, and the kind of parties that the politicians can participate in, and also when politicians receive money from their party, that they have to report how they use those political funds. They're required to be spent on political activities, but that's it's there's no documentation that follows that. They wanted that tightened up. They got some, they didn't get some. Ishin and Komeito and the LDP voted for that legislation. It passed the uh, lower house. In fact, in the lower house, the LDP and Komeito hold a supermajority. They have more than 51%. In fact, the LDP holds more than 51%. It's in the upper house where the LDP needs more push to pass the legislation. So Ishin decided to join in the lower house where they kind of were okay. They weren't needed. They were needed in the upper house. And then by Wednesday, Monday and Tuesday, Ishin charged the prime minister with being deceitful and lying to him about the application of the law. In the negotiations, the prime minister or the LDP did not commit that the uh, uh, applications of the new law would go into effect now or immediately or during this session. That was the intuition, that was the supposition, and it wasn't nailed down. And then on Monday and Tuesday, it was released that, yes, we'll get to it when we get to it, but at least let's just get this legislation passed so that we know what the numbers are, we know what the details are, but the timing will be at some other time. Ishin just blew a corpuscle and uh, bolted from it. The bill still passed without Ishin. In fact, when the bill passed in the upper house, LDP and Komeito 100% voted for the legislation, thereby passing the upper house and becoming law. All of the opposition parties banded together and voted against it. So there's a real contentious issue that's going on that is unresolved. The people are still up in arms about that. Ishin, LDP, unfortunately, they were making great strides in bridging this gap between Ishin and the LDP and having a little bit more of a conversation with each other. It looks like that has been breached. But similarly with the lack of communication between the prime minister and the deputy prime minister, Mr. Aso, and with the secretary general in particular, Mr. Motegi, it's politics. So what happens this week is not reflected too much in what happened last week. If you want a friend, get a dog. It's all about numbers. It's all about politics. Don't hold a grudge. Every day is a new day. So similarly with Ishin, there might be some inroads that the LDP can build, but the prime minister is under increasing pressure, and I'd like to get into that a little bit more later. A no confidence motion was filed. It did not pass. All opposition parties joined in on that, but they just don't have the push. The opposition party, even as a collective whole, does not reach the number that would require a no confidence motion to pass. Other things that are going on, the 6-year plan for the basic policy for economic and fiscal management and reform passed on Friday. You have to be careful and watch those bills, the legislation that passes on the final days of a diet session. That means that they've been in caucus, they've been in discussion, they're very difficult. People don't want them to pass. There's too much opposition, and they push it through on the final days. This one with the Fiscal Reform Act that passed, that means the Japanese government has decided, the LDP has decided to balance the budget for 2025. That has implications for a lot of things, for not just defense spending, but also for spending for a lot of different things, and also for tax receipts. There's been a push and a discussion about charging foreigners more when they come in to visit Japan. It looks like any angle that the Japanese government or the economy can get in boosting revenue is going to be exploited. So these discussions, it's going on throughout the country, but it is something to be to be watchful for. Um, in the same time last week, as you know, we talk about Japanese politics by week. So every week there's something new that comes up that we report on, and it's just been a flurry of activity. President Putin visited North Korea. They didn't quite know about that. It was under wraps, very secret. They were told that within weeks, perhaps maybe months, Mr. Putin will visit North Korea, and then boom, he was in North Korea. He was in North Korea for 2 days. It was a real love fest. I don't think you could have missed it if you're watching Japanese television or reading the newspapers, but it was a big deal. They signed a mutual security agreement, which is a big deal. That means that if either country is attacked, the other is honor bound to go to their defense and to support them. So this is a worrying move. Mr. Putin spent 2 days in North Korea. He received two new dogs from our great leader, Mr. Kim. Um, and I think that relationship is going to begin to show signs of flourishing more. He left North Korea and visited Vietnam, and that's not as worrying as what happened in North Korea. So it's going to be a continuing saga. We're going to continue to watch that. Um, Japan had a state visitor. New Zealand. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Christopher Luxon, visited and signed some information security agreements with the Prime Minister. It looks like it was a very good trip. If you travel much in Nagatacho or around the area, you'll see frequently countries' flags flying from the telephone poles together with a Japanese flag. And whenever they do that, that means that the country has a state visitor. So you might have seen those flags flying. Let me see, what else is there to talk about? We've got the Prime Minister is under fire, as everybody knows. You don't have to read the newspaper or stay tuned to this program to know that. He has decided not to call a snap election, and he has also said, I'm not going to reshuffle my cabinet. But, you know, you've got to imagine what else is up his sleeve. He is a very unpredictable guy, we're finding out, with a lot of the things that he's done without conferring with the Deputy Prime Minister or with the Secretary General of the LDP. Very unusual. He goes his own way, which he didn't seem to be that kind of individual when he first became Prime Minister, but I think that's where he's going now. Let me see. He has said, I think that when the presidential election comes up in September, at the end of September, my term as president of the LDP comes to an end. I know people say that I'm under fire. I don't feel like I'm under fire. I feel like I'm doing a good job. I feel like I'm doing what a prime minister should do. And I think I will be a candidate to replace myself in September. And that's not very much of a calculated risk. In the last 44 elections, where an incumbent has sought to replace himself, only one has been defeated. So the statistics are in his favor that if he wants to, as an incumbent, repeat his term of office, his 3-year term of office, he's likely to succeed himself. But you never know. This is a funny time, Japanese politics being as it is, and the economy and geopolitics being what they are. Many would say it's just great to have somebody in the position, and it's not a rotating door that every 6 months or every year you have to learn the pronunciation of the name of the new prime minister. So that is a good thing. But I think this prime minister is really under fire, and it's not just the opposition. You can imagine that the opposition is going to be united against the administration, and in particular the prime minister, if there is anything to be critical of. But this is the local chapters of the LDP. They are also saying, we want a new prime minister. This guy is no good for us. And more increasingly, as the Diet session came to an end last week, it's not just the local chapters of the LDP, it's people inside the Diet who are LDP members. A 4-term lower house member also came out just this week and said it's time for the prime minister to give it up and put new leadership in there. So that call could be reaching more of a not a crescendo. The crescendo would be coming more towards the summer months, but it is beginning to pick up speed. And as we end this diet session, we enter into a new phase. So the diet session is over. That means all of the members of the parliament need to be in Tokyo. They have residences for all of the politicians who come from outside of Japan. They live in Tokyo during the diet session. They're required to be here. And now they are not, and they're going back to their election districts to kiss babies and to shake hands and to join weddings and to talk about what's going on in Japanese politics that they are supporting. So everybody is gearing up for the presidential election and also for the potential snap election. Everybody wants to be reelected, and whoever is the prime minister in the next session will be in charge of two elections, a upper house and a lower house election. So it, with Kishida, the track rate for the Prime Minister Kishida has not been very good over the last 5 election terms. We've got the election for Tokyo governor. The LDP is not sponsoring, not endorsing a candidate there. And similarly, one of the reasons why they're not, and one of the reasons why the candidates are not clamoring for LDP support is because it is something of a kiss of death. So I think it will be a very active summer and into the autumn, and the presidential race will be something that we are going to be talking about with increasing frequency coming up. Fuji Press, which is the newspaper that really lambasts the president more than everybody else. NHK, of course, is softer on the prime minister. They put his approval rating at about 22%. Fuji Press, a little bit more acerbic, a little bit more negative towards the administration, puts it at around 18% approval rating. So this is the lowest among all of the G7. They were just in Italy last week. The prime minister came back last week on Sunday, not in time to catch this program, unfortunately, but he came back later in the day. And even among the G7, his approval ratings are the lowest of all of the G7. And so he's got friends that are slapping him on the back, but also looking askance at him if he's going to be at the next G7 meeting. So it's funny time. The LDP and the Ishin relationship is in tatters. We talked about this a couple of times before. The Ishin used very strong words in describing the LDP as being deceitful and lying to them about the application of the law. So now the application of the law passed on Wednesday. They did a lot of cleanup on Thursday, and then the prime minister closed the diet on Friday. He could have closed it on Sunday, today, but it was just 150 days included Saturday and Sunday. I don't think anybody intended to be working on Saturday and Sunday. And there was a possibility of extending the diet. The fact that the diet wasn't extended is probably the prime minister saying, I just want this to be behind me. I'm finished with this. I want to move on and get other things going, and being under the gun like this is just not very pleasant. And you could see the prime minister coming back from Italy. He did look tired. Immediately he came in on Sunday. He had meetings with his team about the legislation, which was supposed to be passed. He heard about the kerfuffle with Ishin and them bolting and not supporting the LDP in the upper house vote, although the legislation still passed. So he was, 2 steps forward and then 4 steps backward. And then on Wednesday, he had the debate with the other leaders of the political parties. And that was very, kind of revealing about the degree of dissatisfaction with him and the things that people were saying about him and his policies. So it was good viewing, but the diet was going to end in a day after that in any event. So it was just kind of clearing the air. The prime minister had a caucus with his LDP members. Although he missed one the day before, he received a lot of criticism for not joining the LDP meeting, which is exclusive for the LDP members. He missed that one and had his surrogate represent him. And then the following day, he had the bigger meeting, which he did show up at. But you got to give him a little bit of credit because I mean, he has been under the gun and traveling internationally, and I know that they're cajoled when they travel. They have their own airplane and that sort of thing, but it is a tough, tough job. And this prime minister has been really beaten up. So he said very clearly, there's not going to be a snap election. I'm not going to do that. And everybody says, of course, you're not going to do that because the LDP would be decimated if you did. And he also said, I'm not going to shuffle the cabinet. And people also say, yeah, it would be hard for you to shuffle the cabinet. And when you think about shuffling the cabinet, there are two problem areas that the prime minister would face. Number one, if he shuffles the cabinet between now and the presidential election, which is in 3 months' time, the person who comes in as his designate for a cabinet post could possibly be one of the shortest lived cabinet posts, because the prime minister could obviously change in September and then they would be out of a job. The other thing that is problematic is that the prime minister is not rating very highly, as we know, and coming in, being invited to join the cabinet by the prime minister, you might say, "Thank you, but I'm getting my hair done and I'm kind of busy right now. Thank you very much for the invitation." So, the candidates that might be willing under certain circumstances would not be willing. And then finally, the other problem for the prime minister is that all of the people who are potentially great candidates to become prime minister are in the administration. Kawakami, Hayashi, Motegi, they are already there. And by tradition, they are restricted. They are, it is just totally bad politics, bad form to be critical of the administration or to be critical of the prime minister, even though they might feel it. And you better believe Mr. Aso and Mr. Motegi have a lot to say, and they say it in private meetings that they have. But you really can't criticize the administration that you are a part of. So should he release some of these individuals and change them out because they're just a pain in his side, and put somebody else in, that releases them to now be critical of the prime minister. So he's unlikely to have a cabinet shuffle. But once again, he's very unpredictable. You never know what he's going to do. He surprised me. He surprised a lot of people in what he has done. So it's just, you got to stay tuned every week to see what we're talking about and see what's going on in Japanese politics. And once again, thank you for doing that. So the government has passed the Honebuto policy. That's the basic policy for economic and fiscal management and reform. It was passed on Friday. What the government has decided to do is to balance the budget. That means that the currently the Japanese government deficit compared to the GDP. That means the amount of money that the government spends and the amount of money that it takes in according to the gross domestic product, is unbalanced at 250%. So it's spending 200. The accumulated amount is at 250% of what it generates in gross domestic product. It's by far the greatest of the G20 countries, not just the G7. And the Japanese government has said mostly this is because of COVID. Over the last couple of years, we weren't able to balance our budget. But we're going to do that now. So that means that the government expenditures are matched by government taxes, because that's how the Japanese government makes money, is they tax people, or they get rebates, or they sell some of the properties that they have. It's going to be a tough nickel for them to do that, but they've stated that that is their goal. They have excluded interest payments for 2025, and they'll try and capture that in the budget of 2026. But not since 1991 has Japan been able to cover expenses, including debt servicing costs, with tax revenue. And so this sets a fight. There are many people within the LDP who say we need to spend more money. It is the government's responsibility to have subsidies, to build roads and highways, to inject money into the economy, so it starts the economy going up. It's a kind of virtual perpetual motion machine that gets going. And the reason why this machine is not working well is because the yen and oil inflation and the war in Ukraine, thousands of reasons. but we should spend more. And then the fiscal conservatives are saying we have to 250% over GDP. It's unsustainable. We need to bring our economy back into focus. And the reason why the yen is fluctuating like this, and the reason why we have to support the value of the yen, even though it's not currency manipulation, because the Treasury didn't say that, is because we are out of balance too. So we've got to get this economy going. And for those of you who are, I think everybody that's in the show is a Japan hand in one form or fashion. You know that the economy here for 20 years has been in the doldrums. It hasn't been. Japan is number one is a thing of the past. So trying to claw back into that former glory is a dream of everybody. But there are reasons for the economy being in this kind of a bad situation. Let's talk about Tokyo elections. We've got 56 candidates now. It's not comical. This is serious business. But 56 candidates. The Tokyo metropolitan government puts up 14,000 billboards throughout the city. 14,000 billboards, and those billboards are they have 48 squares. They don't have 50 squares. They don't have 56 squares. They have 48 squares. And they've been ordered and built and constructed. And the final count that we find out now, the election campaign started on Wednesday, is 56. So now we have 56 candidates and only 48 slots for them to put their picture. So the Tokyo metropolitan government came up with a lottery system, and the 8 people who don't have a slot for putting up their pictures, they can staple something to the side of the billboard. So you'll be seeing all of these billboards posted with the photos of the individual who is running in most cases, plus a couple that are stapled. And the Tokyo metropolitan government is not responsible for putting the posters up. That's for volunteers. So for those people who are just signing, they paid the 3 million yen entry fee. If they don't have supporters that are stapling their photograph on these 14,000 billboards, then they're just not going to be there. They're not going to have a photo there. So you need a campaign staff, you need a platform, you need a lot of different things. But for 3 million yen, a lot of people think this is not a bad deal. I get to go on TV for 5.5 minutes twice during the election campaign. I get certain airtime on radio shows, my policies, or at least my face and my business connections maybe are repeated to the voters. Maybe I'm not that interested in politics. I just want people to know who I am. So there are a lot of people who will spend 3 million yen for that. In fact, if you don't generate 10% of the vote, the 3 million yen is gone. But if you generate more than 3 million, some of that 3 million, if you generate more than 10% of the voter appeal based on the votes that have been cast, then a certain portion, a large portion of the 3 million initiation fee is returned to you. One of the other kind of interesting things for public consumption is that of the 56 candidates, 24 of them are from the party that wants to defeat NHK. So this is protect people from the incursions of NHK, people knocking on your door and insisting very aggressively that you pay your fee, even if you tell them you don't have a TV or you're not watching NHK. Nobody cares about NHK. Get out of my house. So there are 24 candidates. So that's 24 times 3 million that this party has put up. 23 candidates is a lot. I'm sorry, 24 candidates. And for the 18-day campaign that ends on July 7th, that's a lot of activity, and you'll be hearing the sound trucks and complaints about the sound trucks. If you want a sound truck, you have to pay for that, obviously, but there are certain requirements about what times of day, what the decibel limit is, when you're passing a school, what the decibel limit is, and certain norms and decorum that you're supposed to follow. So we're in the thick of it. It started on Wednesday. We'll report again on it next week. There is likely to be lots of horse trading and lots of competition going on there. So it's an exciting time as far as Tokyoites are concerned. Let's see. I don't know if you're following the heat wave that has hit the northern hemisphere, but it is massive. Today is a very rainy day. I'm not reporting from inside Santana or on the deck of Santana. I'm actually in the back seat of my car because it is raining so heavily. Even though I'm on the port, it's Tsuyu has started, not officially though. So Tsuyu is the rainy season. It starts in Okinawa and it inches its way up the archipelago and ends in Hokkaido. It usually lasts for about 25 days. It hit Okinawa on, let me see, it was in Okinawa. When was that? Darn, I had it written down. It hit Okinawa on June 7th, and it lasted 11 days, and it's over now. And in fact, it hasn't quite hit Kanto, even though we've experienced a tremendous rainfall, and we had a beautiful day, a very hot day earlier in the week, and then the rain came, and then today is just miserable. But officially, Tsuyu hasn't started. It's finished in Okinawa. It's inching its way up. It is expected to be a very brief. It's already 7 days late hitting Tokyo. So it's a very wild time in terms of weather, and it's not just here in Japan. I think this is maybe a precursor to an extremely hot summer coming up. TEPCO and the electric companies are gearing up for that because of the use of air conditioning, especially for older people. Japan has a high percentage of elderly people who are retired, who are staying at home, and the heat is particularly hard on them. In Mecca, they are having the Hajj, which is the pilgrimage that all Muslims are required to do once in their lifetime. They get millions of visitors every year. This is just amazing news. In Saudi Arabia, 2 million people on the Hajj to the Grand Mosque. Let me see. The temperature was 51 degrees Celsius. There were more than 1,000 deaths on Thursday. Is this incredible? Egypt alone reported 530 deaths, and that was up from 307 deaths the day earlier. So this is just really incredible. Serbia, 40%, 40 degrees Celsius there due to the winds coming up from North Africa across the Balkans. This is your area of town, Maya. And floods in Dubai, just incredible floods in a desert area. I'm sure you might have seen something on YouTube or TikTok that shows that. It's just incredible. The U.S. is under a heat dome phenomena where the high pressure prevents the cooler winds from coming in. It kind of sits on the continent. Phoenix has 45 degrees Celsius, and New York City is under a very severe heat warning now. India had the hottest night in 35 years, 35 degrees Celsius at 1 a.m. in New Delhi. And people have said this is going to be, or this already is, the warmest. And summer just started, right? The hottest in 2,000 years. Japan, Tsuyu starts 2 weeks late, as I said. And so this summer is going to be a hot one for us. Please be prepared for that. But also you should know that what's coming up. It's raining now. It's a pleasant day. It's a hot day. It's a nice day. It's going to end very quickly when Tsuyu ends. As you know, the weather gets incredibly hot. The Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako left for England yesterday, so I think they're going to miss this show, unfortunately. And let me see what else I've got. The tourism is up. Tourism is a very big deal, as you know, Maya. This is your area of specialization too. 3.04 million visitors just in May, so the numbers aren't in for the last month, but it's up 9.6% from 2019. So 2019 was kind of like the bellwether. We were coming up. We hadn't hit COVID yet. And that was the last time they had approached 3 million. This month, or actually last month, is the third consecutive month where they have breached more than 3 million visitors into Japan. And it is unmistakable. You can't walk around town. I think you probably can't walk anywhere in Japan and not be cognizant of the number and the volume and the uh, just the appearance of foreigners throughout the country. Japan is a hotspot. It is the most highly rated tourism spot in the world. The yen being as it is right now, it makes it a little bit, actually quite a bit more attractive than it used to be. If you've been in Japan for 2 or 3 decades, you remember that the yen was very high, and Japan was an expensive place to visit, and people, friends, families were reluctant to come visit you because the travel costs and the hotels in Japan and eating out were just so expensive. But now it's a real bargain. But in any event, it's caused some problems, Maya, as we both have talked about frequently offline. Hajime, let me see, in Hyogo Prefecture, Hajime Castle has maybe 400,000 visitors a year. 30% of them are foreigners, and they've come up with a plan to charge foreigners more to do this. So it's one of the outbreaks of so many foreigners. We've seen this in Kyoto too, where certain streets are closed off to foreigners because they're disruptive. They don't follow norms of decorum that the Japanese anticipate or expect. The governor of Hyogo has promoted a plan to increase the charge for foreigners as compared to locals. So just for visiting the castle, currently it's about $6, and the locals receive a benefit of visiting that. They want to charge foreigners for visiting $30, so that's quite an increase. Right now, climbing Mount Fuji, you have to register for that. Only 4,000 people a day are allowed to climb to the summit. 2,000 yen, it's not a big deal, but it used to be free. I've climbed Mount Fuji 4 times, didn't pay anything. And it's something everybody should do at least once. But now it's become overpacked with foreigners, and they don't know how to or what to do, or it just irritates the locals to no end. And so it's become a bit of an issue, this irritation with foreigners. I'm afraid it's going to increase, not only because it is something that is irritating people. They can't go to their own restaurants. The restaurants are charging more and offering different foods that the locals would never eat, but the foreigners are eating up like hotcakes, and including hotcakes. So it is potentially becoming a social and potentially a kind of a diplomatic geopolitical issue with the number of foreigners that are coming in. So it's something to watch for. It's a topic of keen discussion, and how the Japanese are going to handle that is anybody's guess. But I'm thinking that they will start with Kyoto and with Hyogo Prefecture, and increasing the number of or the amount that is being charged to foreigners, or maybe an entry fee or a tax when they come into the airports here. I think is highly likely, just to kind of bolster it. In fact, the defense spending, if you recall that the Prime Minister committed to 2% of GDP would be dedicated to defense spending. That was based on the Japanese yen being at around $110 to the yen. It is now $157 to the yen. And so the amount and the volume of defense assets that the Japanese government was going to procure is reduced by 30%, and that is upsetting, Japan's allies, in particular the United States, which has been looking forward to Japan purchasing more from the defense industry in the United States and elsewhere, and also developing their own industrial base here. Anyway, that's an encapsulation of the hot issues that happened this week. I'd like to open it up for questions, your comments, and your participation, Maya. Thank you very much, everyone, for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about Japanese politics. Maya will turn on her mic one of these days. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. So I was quick, to mute myself so that you wouldn't comment about me and my cat. Now what happens is this. You know. Okay, thank you, Timothy. We have accumulated quite a lot of questions actually, but before we go into that, I wanted to give just a brief word
Give a shout out
about.
to our sponsors.
Indeed, yes. Okay, and our sponsor, Houze Inc. If you haven't heard of them yet, here we go. Houze Inc. offers bilingual services in custom home design, construction, and renovations, plus commercial building construction and reconstruction. So, if you need bilingual services to redesign or design your home, reconstruct your home or your office or even your shop, please contact Hana or Shizawa Hawa on LinkedIn. The details are in the description of the video on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. So, Timothy, let's go
Yes.
into.
Without their sponsorship, I wouldn't be able to do this briefing in the backseat of the Rolls Royce. So we really appreciate that. What a great
Indeed,
sponsor.
yes, yes, wonderful. Okay, I appreciate that very much too. And let's start with the questions. I will first start with the questions in Clubhouse,
Okay.
Timothy. So the first one of them comes from Cam, and Cam writes, okay, first a comment. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump will debate on Thursday, Friday, Japan time, and an event with significant implications for Asia. Those of us who served in the Trump White House take pride in Trump's collaboration with the Japanese Prime Minister. And, what are your thoughts on what to expect from the debate, and where is the debate watch party?
Thank you, Cam, for that little hint there. Langley Esquire and Japan Expert Insights is not currently proposing a watch party, although it is a good idea. Somebody should sponsor a breakfast get together where there's a widescreen TV where we are watching the debate while eating bagels and drinking coffee, 9 o'clock on Friday morning. Sorry, Cam, I'm not going to bite at that nice piece of bait that you've dangled in front of me. But this is potentially one of the most important days in American political current history. Sorry, I'm couching my words there, because it's a debate between Joe Biden and President Trump, and it could dictate the outcome of the election. It's that important. And so the performance of the president against somebody like Donald Trump, even somebody that's on steroids and in the prime of their life would have a hard time debating Donald Trump when he's riled up. So it's a real test of these two giants getting toe to toe together. So definitely I will be watching it. Yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation to host something. The other thing that I'd like to say is that whether you support Trump or whether you support Biden, the fact that you might support Trump invites such ridicule and derision that most people that don't. The tactic of the left is to be critical, to cancel people who are voting for a convicted criminal and this person who is close to the devil and that sort of thing. So calm, measured discussion, it's just not even possible. So it's a feature of the current political environment in the United States. It is distasteful. It is abhorrent. I wish it wasn't the way it was. I wish we had more candidates. I wish we had better candidates to watch in a debate. But it is what it is. So, great question. I don't want to go too long on it, and please don't cancel me because of my my comments or what I left unsaid. Thanks, Cam.
Thank you, Timothy. And then we continue with the second question. So, what is the government race in Tokyo? What is the governor race in Tokyo about? With over 50 candidates, it appears to be centered around two women. One, the incumbent, and um, the other one, a prominent member of the largest opposition party, both with TV celebrity backgrounds and a
Yep.
keen of their awareness of okay, maybe their affiliation. Why has the ruling party under Prime Minister Kishida struggled to find a candidate to challenge them?
Who's this excellent question from?
It is from Cam.
Thank you, Cam. Okay, so you put another pile there for me to put my foot in. Um, the Tokyo election is a popularity race, which is strange because Tokyo is the largest metropolis in the world. You would think, being governor, uh, Tokyo generates vastly more GDP than six of the countries that surround Japan. I mean, it is massive. Just the city of Tokyo, it's an incredible um, economy in and of itself. So you would think that the governorship is going to be more hotly contested, but it's always been pretty much a popularity contest. And the person who gets it gets to manage the city, and that's a pretty big deal. It's not just between Renho and Koike, but yeah, when you take a look at everybody else, eventually there might be another contender who rises up and distinguishes himself because of his stance on supporting children or healthcare or some of the issues that Tokyo uniquely um, has. But I think basically it's against Renho and Koike. The LDP is not supporting endorsing Koike. Number one, because she hasn't asked for it. And number two, because there are people within the LDP who despise Koike. They view her as a traitor. She was in the LDP before. She actually had two cabinet posts, and she left to run for governor. And she created, instead of bringing the LDP along with her, she said, "I'm going to start my own party." So she started her own party very successfully. Um, it's not quite a party on the national level, but within Tokyo politics, it is. It's very strong. It elevated her to governor. And as far as the governor is concerned, she's not really seeking their endorsement because the last five times the um, LDP attempted to endorse a candidate, those candidates lost. So once again, it refers back to my earlier statement about the kiss of death of the LDP or of the prime minister. The other thing that's kind of made it a little bit more complicated now is there are no more factions. There's only one faction, the ASO faction, existing in the LDP. I think those factions still exist in a kind of a a, a, a kind of a vision of what they were earlier, without some of the organizational hallmarks of being a faction. But I think they're still cohesive wholes. But when you had the faction would vote en bloc. Everybody voted the way the boss said to vote. And so it was a very powerful source of generating even more political clout. Now, members of the parliament who are from Tokyo can support or endorse any way they want to. They're not restricted. They're not being dictated to. They can vote with their own convictions, and so many many people who are affiliated with, for example, the Abe faction, are voting in a coalition force because they've received some sort of a negotiation with the current governor. Similarly, with Renho, she's with the Constitutional Democratic Party. She was with the Constitutional Democratic Party. She resigned last Wednesday. She was a four-term upper house member, very popular, very prominent. She was a newscaster, so she's an eloquent speaker. She's dynamic. She's acerbic. She's really sharp. But the knives will come out for her because, in order to become elected, she is cozying up to the Communist Party of Japan to get their support. And that's kind of like, as long as you don't get support from the communists, I'll vote for you. But by the way, Renho, you're part Taiwanese, aren't you? So isn't this a little bit kind of going more in that direction? So people will drop their own conclusions about that. So it's going to be a tough race. I don't want to make a prediction one way or the other now, but like with the prime minister, whose um, approval rating is 18% right now, being an incumbent, if the prime minister wants to succeed himself, he'll probably succeed himself. A lot's going to happen between now and then. But similarly with the Tokyo governor, it's hard to beat an incumbent. And I hope that responds adequately to your great question, Cam. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more thing from Cam. He says, I would like to welcome Eric Jacobs, who is new listener to your show and worked with me at the White House. He has recently moved to Japan to work on his fellowship with Hitachi. Thank you very much for that, Cam.
Thanks, Cam.
Timothy, welcome from you probably as well. Very welcome to, yes, very welcome to Eric, and thank you for that. So let us move forward. We have quite a few questions on LinkedIn as well. So I'll start with, okay, first a comment from, oh, okay.
Go, Maya, go. Go, Maya, go.
Okay, okay. A comment from Stephen, who is now in Johannesburg in South Africa, and he says peace and okay, peace and it's discontent. So basically, this comment came when you were talking about the Battle of Okinawa and what happened afterwards. And so, thank you, Timothy and Maya, for the week that was. Greetings from. Well, wintry or maybe windy morning in Johannesburg. So out of the shadows, we are out of the shadows of our own presidential elections and inauguration of our seventh democratic parliament. Congratulations on this, Stephen. It's really great to know that South Africa continues on this path. And then next we go to,
Sorry.
yeah.
Stephen is living in South Africa and he's tuning in, or he's an expat that's in Tokyo. He's just back in South Africa now. What's the story with Stephen?
Stephen is now he used to be in Tokyo, and now he is back in South Africa, I believe, and he is there, so he tunes from Johannesburg every morning,
Thank
Sunday
you very much.
morning.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot for that. When you come to Tokyo, let us know. We'll be very happy to meet you in person.
Yes, and
And
they are in the dead of winter now.
in the dead of winter, yes. Okay, so next we've got okay, Patricia. Patricia is Patricia Yarrow from
Okay.
YK. Thank you very much, Patricia, for joining us. And her comment is actually about the trash bins in Tokyo and maybe throughout Japan. Well, saying that trash bins, they should be out there everywhere in the streets because it is. Well, it is the responsibility of the government, and maybe this is not on anybody's agenda right now, and it seems to be a daily need neglected to save a few. And I wonder, Timothy, if you would like to share or to have a comment on this or share your thoughts about this.
Yeah, it's thanks, Patricia, for joining, and thanks for being such a great supporter of the program. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think once they have succeeded in eliminating the trash cans, it's unlikely for it to come back. It's now become a part of uh, I could say Tokyo culture, but more broadly, Japanese culture. It's like, kicking your shoes off or eating with chopsticks or, bowing when you meet somebody. I think the Japanese actually take pride in the fact that there are no trash bins. They take pride in the fact that all of the convenience stores have participated and accommodated this rule of eliminating trash cans so that even though you might have some trash in your pocket or you drank a Coke or something else from someplace else, you can always go into a convenience store and use their trash can. Nobody's going to look sideways at you. Um, but I think the Japanese and foreigners, in fact, I know you've been here for like 100 years, Patricia, but I think a lot of foreigners also like the fact that Japan is clean even in spite of the fact that there are no trash bins. And even if there are trash bins, people miss or they don't throw the right stuff in, or it just, even when people are separating trash and making different piles for plastics or glass or even perishable products, the crows always come in. These are sophisticated crows in Tokyo. They still get at it. So I think it's a non-issue. I don't think anybody is going to put together a lobby to bring the trash cans back. I don't think it has a groundswell of appreciation for it. That's my take on it, and I could be wrong, but I think that that's a pretty solid a statement of Japanese policy with regard to that.
Yeah, that's my experience with friends and relatives here in Japan as well. So I guess that you're pretty much on point there,
You
Timothy.
know, it's fun. It's funny because you can go to any other city in the world and they have the trash cans, but none of them suffered from the sarin gas attack, which is used as the basis for getting rid of the trash cans. But the Japanese just used that as leverage to do one more thing. And yeah, I don't think it costs a lot of money to put trash cans out, but it's become something of an issue of pride, I think. And the fact is, you can go to any street in Japan. It is immaculate. It is clean. There's no trash. There's no cigarette butts. There's no gum paper. There's no gum, uh, uh, you know, on the street. That sort of thing. It's just people always mention, what an immaculate city Tokyo is, but it's not just Tokyo. Every city in Japan is like that. There's no messy city, right?
Right. Yes, that's true. Okay, so thanks for this, and we're going through the questions. There is one question from Mr. Norikazu Yamaguchi, who wrote, "Will Shinji Ishimaru win Tokyo governor election?" Shinji Ishimaru. So I'm not sure, is that the person who is actually coming from the NHK Beat NHK party, or
No, that's the fellow
okay?
who's
Let me have
yeah.
a quick.
Let me see. The fellow
Oh,
is yeah. Who is Ishimaru? If you can
I think we
elaborate a little.
lost you for a moment, Timothy.
Am I back on?
Yes, let me have a look. You are back on, yes. Shinji
Okay.
Shimaru is a mayor of. Okay, what I get online is he's a mayor in Hiroshima Prefecture City, and he will run in Tokyo. So, did you hear me?
Yes, I did. The
Okay.
fellow who is promoting "Let's crush NHK, get them out of our lives" is Tachibana Takeshi Sensei.
Yes, yes,
Um,
indeed. I apologize for that confusion.
so this other candidate, I know some of the candidates, but I don't know this one that you're talking about. Although he is prominent, they're all prominent. They all have a base of support. Um,
Mhm.
a little bit more detail of why you think he should win, or something like that, might help me give a better take on that. But I'm not a voter in the Tokyo election, so all I can do as a political observer and analyst comment on it. But I can be challenged on any of the evaluations that I make. So perhaps you have a better view, or maybe you can support or diminish his um, candidacy by coming up or telling Maya exactly what you're getting at.
Mhm.
But that Yamaguchi-san.
Right. Yes. Okay. So then let me continue until we're waiting, while we're waiting from Mr.
Okay.
Yamaguchi to give us a little bit more detail. Hopefully, continue with another question. This time from Mr. Seiichiro Manabe. And the question is it Motegi's intention to request Prime Minister Kishida not to run for the presidency, I believe, which is said to be the intention of young LDP members in Hokkaido?
I think if you're listening to Mr. Motegi as he dozes off to sleep when he's got his head on the pillow, he's probably saying that, please don't run, please don't run. Motegi is probably the top contender for the position, even though he has, not support. He could probably get it if Mr. Aso throws his weight. I think anybody who Mr. Aso throws his weight behind is probably going to win the presidency. Mr. Motegi and Mr. Aso are close. They're the three people, uh, I mean, together with the prime minister, who have been guiding and running this administration. There should have been a fourth person representing the Abe faction, and there never was. They never got their act together. They never really came together and identified a sole spokesperson. Well, they kind of did, but not with enough energy that he was invited to the table. So it was just these three individuals. And Mr. Kishida has done a tremendous job in alienating these two individuals from him. Mr. Aso has his own favorite people. Mr. Motegi has his favorite person himself. And Mr. Suga is also very concerned about who's going to be the next prime minister. Mr. Suga does not like Mr. Kishida. He doesn't hold that back. People know that. Mr. Kishida is prime minister because he defeated or eliminated Mr. Suga as prime minister. So that bridge is a hard one to build. Mr. Motegi, Mr. Suga has his own candidates that he would like to throw his weight behind. Probably not Motegi. So it's not an infinite mix. If you know who Aso is and Motegi and Suga, those are the three kingmakers. There's unlikely to be anybody else that comes in except for Mr. Kishida, who we know is going to support his own candidacy. It is possible that he steps out. There's a lot of time between now and that election. And if the prime minister steps back out or steps out and says, I'm going to take responsibility to preserve the integrity of the LDP, and I turn it over to who you voters might provide to be the president of the LDP. And then who says what's going to happen to the prime ministership, which is different from the LDP. So probably with a change in the LDP leadership, there would be an election, and then a new prime minister would be elected. So that would be in September, October, I think, very quickly. And even if the prime minister becomes, Mr. Kishida becomes LDP president again, it could be such a drawn out, tough fight that it enrages people to have a no confidence motion or to force for an election once again of the lower house. The predictions right now are, just to go just a little bit further, if you don't mind, that if an election was held today, the LDP would get its butt kicked. It would lose maybe 50 or 60 people, and it would be under the 50% mark, and it would rely upon a coalition partner, which would be Komeito, which it already has, but also somebody else, more likely than not Ishin, but that bridge is kind of, the embers are licking at the support lines right now. So it's a tough deal for the prime minister. It's a tough deal for the LDP. There's a lot that's going to happen over the next couple of months. Great question. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that, and I'll continue. So, Stephen, thank you very much for the comment there. I would love to arrange a meeting, so that we can meet in person. So let's communicate. We can communicate on LinkedIn. And Timothy, I'm sorry, this is just something that happened right now. I want to tell everybody thank you for following Japan Expert Insights on LinkedIn. We just hit the 2,000 followers there.
Woo!
Which is, yes, thanks a lot to everybody who did that. And if you haven't followed us yet there, please do, because we have these briefings twice a week. This one about Japanese politics is every Sunday morning, 8:20. Timothy's here. He cannot run away for some reason, right? And, he keeps keeping us informed about what is happening here in Japan, so that you as business owners or business people working in Japan or with Japan know what to expect and how to probably turn, any challenge into an opportunity in your business. Yeah. So thanks a lot. Hit follow and stay with us. And I'll continue. I continue with the next one, the next question, which comes from Rich Young. Rich, thank you very
Hi,
much
Rick.
for the question. So it is about, I believe, security. With uncertain American politics in the background, is Japan prepared to defend itself from China, Russia, and North Korea? If not, is Japan moving in the right direction? What are your thoughts on this, Timothy?
Wow, Rich. Um,
Mm,
that's really loaded. I think without the United States, Japan can't defend itself. It um, against a determined adversary. I think without the United States, because the United States has provided this nuclear umbrella, this protection for 60 years. It's well entrenched. The United States is doing their part. The Japanese is doing their part within the confines of the Japanese Constitution. So the Japanese Constitution allows Japan to arm itself to the teeth with defensive capabilities. So it would be a formidable force. It's probably the Japanese self-defense force is probably the fifth or sixth largest army in the world, but it's not an army. It can't have Japan can't have an army. It can have a self-defense force, which is what it has. Um, but the offensive capabilities, it doesn't have. It doesn't have first strike. It doesn't belong to the Five Eyes intelligence servicing alignment of the United States and a couple of United States allies. The sieve of information is too porous in Japan. Nobody wants to have their sensitive secrets shared with Japan because there have been too many breaches. And I mean, it's not all of Japan's fault. Part of it is, but the thing is, Japan is a magnet for spies. There are so many spies and intelligence gathering, and the ability of the Japanese government to prevent that or to put a cap on that. It's not a police state, and so anything that kind of smacks of that is really hard to implement. So it's a well-known global playground for budding spies or guys that want to be spies or spies in training or professional spies. Um, but the critical question is: could Japan uh, potentially defend itself? It could do a pretty good job, but without the United States, I think it would. Most people would agree it would be a hard call for Japan to have a sustainable defensive posture. I mean, the number of people who are involved in the military-industrial complex, the number of people who are involved as self-defense soldiers, it is just too small. They don't have the amount of punch that would be required. The worrying thing, and I think what you're getting at here, Rich, is this alignment with Putin and Kim, the North Korea and Russian um, security alliance. So Russia has Sakhalin and the northern territories. North Korea is just on the western side of Japan, not very far away. It's toying with nuclear and hypersonic missiles. It is firing missiles. It wants to put up a spy satellite so that it can watch and observe, and probably be a little bit more aggressive in its action towards its neighbors. It has a bone to pick with Japan. It blames Japan for having the peninsula divided, even though it was the United States that came in and fought that war. But ultimately, it's Japan's fault, and what Japan did during the colonial period should never be forgotten, should never be forgiven. So you've got that going on too. Excuse me. And then you've got China, which similarly, under the colonial rule that lasted for more than 40 years before the Pacific War even started. So Japan was on a run in Southeast Asia before Pearl Harbor or any of that stuff happened. So it's a rich mix, and I think the constitutional revision was supposed to come up uh, in the current prime minister's term of office. The prime minister committed to that when this session of the Diet started, and he wasn't able to get to it. They did pass an expansion of the administration's rights and powers and authorities over the entire nation in the event of an emergency, and then it gives greater powers to the central administration. Um, this should be worrying. They passed it on Friday, the last day, I think on Thursday, actually. And the United States did the same thing and has always been in a state of emergency, which means that the special powers of the central administration, the presidency and the administrative state have taken hold. That special situation, that emergency that the United States is suffering in, I think has been continuously re-implemented for at least 35 years. So maybe the Japanese are taking a page from that book. They wanted to revise the Constitution so that they could similarly expand the powers of the central government in the event of an emergency. And this is supposed to be one of the easiest things. So they want to get to Article 9, but baby steps first. First, let's just revise the Constitution in some innocuous way so that now we tell people we can revise the Constitution. This is how it's done. This is the way that we do it. This is a process. So for every year now, let's expect that there will be a revision to the Constitution. Actually, it needs it. The Constitution has not been revised since its creation. That's never happened with any of the countries in the G20. And most countries of the world, they have a Constitution that's revised from time to time. The Japanese Constitution has been untouched. So it needs it. And maybe Article 9, yes, I think Article 9 needs to be revised. My own particular feelings on that is currently Japan has a peace constitution, somewhat similar to what Switzerland had, where it would be a neutral country. But given the geopolitics and the just the contentious issues in this region of the world, I think it's not a wise decision to be neutral. I don't think you can be neutral in this situation. Anyway, those are my comments. Thanks, Rich.
All right, thank you for the comments, Timothy. And moving on, next is Rumiko. So Rumiko's question is about the political funds, the reform. So would you let us know when is the effective date of the bill?
Great question, Rumiko. So you asked this question last time too, and since the bill hadn't been passed, I didn't know what the answer was, but I told you I would let you know. Here's the answer. So the bill passed on Wednesday. It passed the upper house, thereby becoming law. And the restrictions on political funds and transparency and reporting and who gets into trouble if it's ill reporting, that sort of thing, it goes into effect January 1st. So now we've got 6 months, 6 months of time. You know, I go to these political briefings all the time, sometimes 4, 5, 6 times a week. When we begin to get close to an election cycle, they increase. It might be 7 or 8. I get invited to many more of them. I just can't attend all of them. But the number of these political briefings that have been held over the last 3 weeks have been very skinny. I've attended maybe 2 a week. They're beginning to increase a little bit now, and some of them, which were announced, were canceled like a week before they were supposed to have the briefings. But this is the money machine. This is the way the politicians, the LDP politicians, their favorite way to collect political funds. Different parties do it different ways. The Communist Party, they don't charge anything for their briefings, but they do charge for the Akahata, the newspaper of record for the communists. It's the red flag newspaper. It's got a huge circulation. It generates a lot of money for the party. It's very well scripted, well written, very thoughtful analysis, and it keeps their party members together. The LDP does it a little bit differently. Ishin does it their way. But for the LDP, having these political parties, you contribute nimaen, 20,000 yen, for a breakfast or for lunch or for cocktails or something like that. But it's not pay to play specifically, and it is not specifically a political contribution. It's a benkyokai. It's a study session. So when you go to these briefings, it's not just to hobnob and to support somebody. You actually get value out of that, and that's one of the trade-offs. You have to get value out of that. Mr. Motegi's briefings are, in particular, very, very useful. He passes out about a 40-page PowerPoint presentation that he goes through on the screen in his briefing. He's articulate, he's smart as hell, and he encapsulates a lot of the dynamics of what's going on in Japan. He's a terrific public speaker, but other speakers are like that too, and it's not just a one-off. I hope that responds. Yes, January 1st. So between now and then, I guess I'll be invited to a lot of these political briefings. Thanks, Rumiko.
Thank you. But we continue with the question. Okay, so when the bill was in the upper house, were there any additions to the initial text? And she writes, hopefully the 10-year moratorium was turned down as just nonsense.
Right. That's a good point. Yes, the 10-year moratorium. I think actually the 10-year moratorium, parts of it did succeed. So when a bill goes in, it goes into the lower house. It's passed in the lower house, and then it is elevated to the upper house. If there is an amendment or if there's changes in the bill, it has to go back down for repassing through the lower house. So that tells you that the bill that was as proposed in the lower house 10 days ago went to the upper house 6 days ago or 7 days ago and passed 3 days later. So it was on a greased skids. Once it passed the lower house, it was going to go through. And typically, the lower house, it has the numbers. It has far more numbers than the upper house. They usually hold sway when the bill originates in the lower house. More likely than not, when a bill originates in the upper house, it goes to the lower house. It might suffer from amendments and be kicked back up to the upper house. But that did not happen this time.
All right, and then one more question from Rumiko, and then we'll move to Clubhouse, where Yuka is waiting for us. So the question is regarding the Japanese yen being kept in the watch list of the US Treasury Authority. So do you know whether listing the yen there happened after the Bank of Japan purchased their bonds again recently, or before that?
It happened just recently. I think it happened on Friday Japan time, Thursday in the U.S. They were put on the watch list, but probably people knew about that.
Mhm.
This is not something that happens in a vacuum. It's not a secret. Where the U.S. Treasury is going, what Janet Yellen says publicly, it's been a topic of conversation. Japanese Bank of Japan authorities should not attempt to support the yen without confronting the other realities and conferring with us and other countries. Don't do something on your own with the currency. Let's hold this together. If you do it on your own, it's going to have a very limited impact. Don't do it. And the Japanese did it. So probably there was some signals being sent that should a country do that, Japan or South Korea, should a country do that, we will identify you on the watch list as somebody to watch. So they did, and they kind of didn't. They put them on the watch list, and the Japanese government said, yeah, it's no big deal. It really doesn't mean anything. And the reason why it kind of doesn't mean anything is because in the same breath that they said we're going to put the Japanese currency on the watch list, they also said, but in our assessment, no country in the G20 has been manipulating their currency over the last year. And after you finish laughing when you hear that, then you can put as much validity and veracity onto their first statement that you want to. And I think that's what the Japanese banking officials did.
Right. Well, Rumiko, I hope that this answers your questions. Timothy, a brief greeting.
I always get the shivers when Rumiko comes up because her questions are always she's in that area. This is her specialization.
Yes.
I'm always shaking when she asks a good question. Thank you.
Yes, she's very deep into that, really. She's got great expertise there. So thank you, Rumiko, and please forgive me that sometimes I misread your questions. So, and then Timothy, just a brief hello from Simon, who was at the well, New Zealand and
Right.
Australia mixed week. Yes. Simon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
It's
Diamond.
really a pleasure to have you with us. Yes.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
if I can just go back a little bit. So, Maya, you and I attended the Australia New Zealand Chamber of Commerce event at the Trunk Hotel on Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. It might have been Thursday.
Yes.
Um, yes,
Thursday, maybe.
Thursday. It was a big event. A lot of Australians and Kiwis, and it was a big event. And Simon approached, and I don't know Simon, but Simon came up and he said, "Hi, Mr. Langley. I watch your show. I've been watching it ever since Tokyo on Fire, and thank you very much. I wake up on Sunday. I have coffee. I kick the dog, and I watch your show, and it's so much great information that you provide. And I'm a what a great thing for me to feel because for Maya and me, the audience, you might not know this. We don't really know who is in the audience. Uh,
Mhm.
Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube in particular. Clubhouse gives us a little bit of analytics, but we don't know by name who is watching. And a lot of people prefer to remain anonymous because this is part of their job, and they don't want people to think that they don't know what they're doing, but they watch this to facilitate their knowledge and their base of
Mhm.
understanding. So they don't want to be revealed. So they watch on LinkedIn, and we never know. But it is nice when people come up and say, I've been watching your show. Thank you very much. And it really is this is what Maya and I both do, just as a contribution to the the dynamic, the
Yes.
society, and it's fun for us, kind of fun, but we appreciate the audience appreciates it.
I guess it's more fun for me than for you, but that's for sure. But since we are talking
Thanks, Simon.
about thank you, Simon. Since we're talking about the different channels we are and platforms we are on, I do appreciate you hitting like and also subscribe when you're on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And if you haven't followed us on LinkedIn yet, please do. And let us know. We're always happy to deliver. This is
Yeah,
our motivation, actually. Yes.
yeah, and people should know. I guess maybe new listeners don't know. We don't sell soap. We're not trying to pitch you. It's just a conversation about what's going on in Japanese politics. I'm involved in it. I do it all the time. I don't do briefings. People don't pay me money. As a consequence, that's not my livelihood, but it is something that I'm deeply engaged in, and I can talk about extemporaneously that people are saying, "Wow, that I didn't know that. I didn't know what those connections were." So it's nice to be able to utilize that information that I get as a secondary benefit of my professional job. But yeah, we're not trying to pitch you or sell you anything. It's just our contribution, and I appreciate you, Maya, for coming up with this lousy idea 3.5 years ago, and now we're just kind of stuck to it.
Yeah. No way out. Okay, so thank you. And yes, Yuka, I'm not going to say anything in Japanese. Thank you for waiting, by the way.
Don't touch my mustache. I wanted to say that. That's then you have to say お待たせいたしました。No, no.
今
Okay.
Anyway, okay. So joking aside, I have two quick questions on Tokyo gubernatorial elections for change. So my first question, and I didn't say this, but I've heard, and I thought, I'm gonna ask Timothy on his opinion on this. So we know that there is pretty much the two serious candidates, right? Ms. Koike and then Renho. Now, so a lot of people think that okay, it's Ms. Koike is gonna win not because she's an incumbent, because Ms. Renho is representing all of the opposition parties pretty much in reality, in substance. So she cannot put out strong campaign promises because she has to please all the opposition parties.
Yeah.
That sort of, like dilute her sort of, the campaign. Do you agree with this assessment?
Sure. And so when you listen to her public statements and what she says, it's the best thing for the opposition. Kind of, it's not their only pony in the show, but to be critical, to attack, to say this is what they're doing that's wrong, and Cairo University, and she didn't do this, and she's doing that. And it's harder to come in, like you said, with a proposal that says, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to do that. Because once you do that, then the other candidate, the incumbent, takes whatever energy is in that idea and makes it their own. So it's really difficult to beat an incumbent, and it's difficult to win an election just being critical. So when you watch Renho in the first week of her campaign, she was just a tiny bit shrieky, just a tiny bit really acerbic and being a little bit more animated. She's toned that down a little bit because I think she comes across as being a little bit not flaky. Flaky isn't the right word, but a little bit, yeah. And anything issue that comes up that I can speak about, I'm going to speak about just to fill the air and to cast dispersions against my opponent. And that doesn't win elections. So yeah, through a lot of different aspects, I agree. I think she is Koike is a difficult candidate to beat. She's done a good job with Tokyo. She doesn't have any negatives, no scandals, no sleeping with the secretary, no whining and dining and bringing her her spouse to, Timbuktu for riding the camels. Nothing like that has come up. So we're halfway into it. Not quite. We've been into it for the last 4 days. So in 2 weeks, that will be the election.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then the second question, actually, this is what I really wanted to ask you, but it's kind of sensitive topic, and I'm aware you didn't touch on this, and then I think that was intentional. Should I go with this?
Go ahead.
You can cut off this portion from the recording. About the election poster. So I understand that nobody need to approve about the poster before you put it up. But if somebody else take it down, that's illegal. You can be arrested.
Very
Isn't
illegal.
it one-sided, right? I mean, okay, so it's where this coming from? Is there any reason for this? No, or maybe you have to protect the candidates' right, but right comes with the responsibilities. So, and if you want to skip this question,
no, it's a good question. I didn't quite capture. So it's the responsibility of the candidate to put the poster up, but if somebody takes it down or defaces it, there's a punishment for that. And what's the point you're trying to make? I'm not following you.
Oh, because like a content of the those scandalous contents of the poster.
What scandalous contents in the poster?
Oh, maybe okay. All right then. Okay, maybe I can ask you in private then.
No. Okay, let me explain to you, and maybe this will explain what you're thinking about. When you become a candidate, the governor's office or the election office says, please provide a photograph, and to the degree that satisfies these requirements, you can put certain language in your on your poster. But it's basically restricted to your name and your election district, but not much more. No comments about what your policy is or anything like that. So everybody's is somewhat similar, somewhat bland.
How about photos? What kind of picture can you put up?
You can put up any picture. Okay, so they do say it's like getting your ID for your passport or for your driver's license. A frontal view. You can smile. You don't have to smile. You can have your glasses on. You can do your hair in any way. You can do a little bit, but you're not. You can't do a whole lot. You can't really gesticulate. Make some sort of a gesture or something like that. So when you look at the board, it's just faces. There might be a little bit of variation, but it's just faces. The purpose of having the candidates' scoreboard up there is to tell people these are the candidates that are running for election. this is how you spell their name. So when you go into the booth, you're supposed to write their name, and it must be represented as how it is in their election and on their campaign. And so that's why if they have an election truck or a campaign truck, the truck is pasted with their name, and all they do is they shout their name. Hi, my name is Midori Izaka. Midori Izaka. Midori Izaka. Please vote for Midori Izaka, right? And it's because they must write the name as it is represented on the election campaign registration. And if it doesn't, it's not counted. It is an invalid ballot. Okay.
You know,
take it one step further, and just to respond to the other question that you had about taking it down, it is illegal. It's highly illegal for you to tear that poster off. And if you do that, you're going to get into a lot of trouble. More often, so that frequently happens by the opposition candidate. They send their minions out, and then they take the posters down. It is eventually traced back to the opposition candidate, and they become invalid as a candidate. That happens from time to time. More likely what happens is people draw a mustache, or they cross the eyes out or something like that. That happens pretty frequently.
So they're trying to emulate your picture there.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Does that satisfy you somewhat?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Good.
Well, but I don't know. I'm not sure there. And sorry, I'm probably the buffer between the two of you.
You don't
now.
know that what driving my question, right?
Right, yes.
I'll tell you later, Maya.
Yeah, but okay. Maybe there is a hint on YouTube at the moment, because Simon wrote, and I don't know, I haven't seen that, but Simon wrote, there are naked lady posters. So
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that.
You mean where they're showing cleavage?
I don't know.
I don't think it's a full body. You can't show a full body photo, like standing up or.
I'm sorry I brought that up. Let's just drop this, okay? Maybe this show is PG rated.
Okay, so we've got quite a few reactions to this, the latest.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Point.
Oh, good going, Yuka. Sorry.
Okay, because Rich also wrote on LinkedIn, naked lady on poster issue. Probably there has been such an issue. And also Julian Smith gave us a link, which I'm going to check out.
Sorry, people. I mean...
No, that's okay.
What did I start? Okay, sorry.
And also, okay, Joe Hug, he wrote maybe speaking about kawaii Yusuke. Or... Okay, so these are all, comments we get on LinkedIn, also on YouTube. So I believe, and they came up just now. I believe that they were
No, actually, they already put it down already.
Oh, that poster, you mean?
No, nobody. Yeah, they themselves put it down. So nobody got arrested, and then police didn't have to go there. But anyway, I'm sorry that I brought that up. Shoot, I'm.
No, that's
careful. Shoot.
It's an interesting part of the election process. It's not just local or the governor's race. It also implicates, the national elections too. You remember the guys that were arrested in Tokyo 15 for sitting on top of the telephone booth and, disrupting the election campaign. This stuff is interesting because it's a picture of society. It tells you how people are interacting with each other and people who are pushing the envelope. So right now it's a 2-horse race. It could be a 3 or 4 foot horse race, but these candidates need to distinguish themselves in a way that is consumable and acceptable by the voting public. And when it's not, then you have hell to pay. But you've got to distinguish yourself.
No, I mean, you said the word acceptable. It has to be acceptable, right?
Yeah.
You used the word. That's a key word. And I thought that those election board has to approve that before those posters will get put up. Right. But anyway, sorry. Okay. Anyway, thank you. What? I thought and I went on. Sorry.
It's a good conversation. It's a good thread, because in order to, maybe you're not doing this because of politics. Maybe you're doing this to create your to enhance your social media scores. So you're going to have a lapel badge, or you're going to have some makeup or something that kind of projects what it is you're trying to achieve. You're not trying to get elected. You just want people to know about you and uh, associate you with something that you make money out of. So it's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I tried to, and I probably managed with the help with Julian Smith, to understand part of this question, not all of it. But so basically, in Japan Times, there was an article about poster pranks that cause chaos in Tokyo gubernatorial election campaign, and there is a picture, so which I cannot show unfortunately at this point, but so there is a picture of one of those boards, Timothy, that you mentioned. There were 14,000 of them throughout Tokyo, and on them we can see that there is a picture of a woman who is basically showing not cleavage, but she's, well, basically her face, and a fist, and then a smaller picture of her doing something like a karate posture or something like this, and showing her leg, naked leg there. So, and also a naked tummy, what's the belly button or whatever you call that. So maybe this is one of the, or maybe part of the question. And then basically this picture has been posted on about how many, 12 of these, spots there, the allocated poster spots. So maybe this is one of, or part of the question, or part of the issue here. Anyway, so to everybody who is curious, this, Japan Today, this article is from this morning at 6:05 a.m. So if you go there, I'm sure that you'll find it. It is poster pranks cause chaos in Tokyo gubernatorial election campaign. So maybe part of this is.
And then you didn't hear from me.
I didn't hear it from you. No, not
okay,
you.
thank you.
Not from you. Okay, but Julian, thank you very much for helping with the link there. Well, yes, it looks like, Timothy, we don't have any other questions at this point of time, but we have a comment from Simon, who writes, also, NHK party has sold its poster space to anyone who wants it, and bands are promoting themselves on the boards, poster
Right.
board. Yes. Well, there is quite a lot. I don't know whether this has happened before in previous elections, but it looks like people are coming up with fresh ideas every next election anyway. So it's fascinating to watch.
Yes, it is fascinating. The Let's Kick Out NHK party that has 26 candidates in this
Mm-hmm.
gubernatorial election, in an attempt to generate funds to run the campaigns, has offered to put your face instead of the candidate's face on a particular board for payment of a certain amount of money. It's not an enormous amount of money, but with 14,000 boards, you might be able to, place, the president of some company or some famous person who wants a little bit more notoriety in the position that the candidate has, but switch the face out. So I don't know if that would pass muster, but yeah, it's a new tactic. Thanks, Simon.
Well, definitely a new tactic. And so I encourage everybody. We have been going for more than 1 hour and 30 minutes now. So I encourage everybody who wants to have some laughs, go to LinkedIn and check the comments there as well, because there are some nice comments. You can also do the same on YouTube, because there are other comments there as well in the live chat of this live stream. Well, Timothy,
Thanks, Maya.
thank you. Yes, I know that you're not always looking forward to me, running the intro video of this podcast.
But I look
Because,
forward to you signing off.
right, I know that too. So I'm going to let you do just that right away. Oh, not right away, actually. I have to say something about our wonderful sponsors again before we go. And let me share also their contact details here. You know that our sponsors are already, Kanachu.com that is based in Yokohama, and Houze Inc. that is also based in Yokohama. They offer bilingual services and support foreigners as well as Japanese people who are willing to buy or sell property here, or renovate, design, or redesign their homes, or also offices or commercial spaces. So if you're willing to find out more about their services, connect with James Howell at james@kanachu.com and Hana Urushisawa Howell at LinkedIn. So thanks a lot very much for this. Timothy, once
Thank you,
again,
Maya.
it's from you. That's
That's
all?
it. Yeah, that's
Yes.
it. I'm just happy
Woo!
that this part of the day is over and I could get back to Santana.
Great. Okay, thanks a lot to everybody. Simon for being with us, Rich and Julian, also Julian, and everybody who connected with us. So thank you very much for the 2,000
Wow.
follower on LinkedIn. We got to this milestone just now, and we're looking forward to having you with us again next Wednesday and also on Sunday again. Have a great day. Don't mind the rain in Tokyo. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thank